So, people, welcome, YouTubers, welcome to my part 2, figuring out when people are mentally retarded. Let's have a look quickly back to the previous one, where we said, well, normally you can't call somebody retarded because he has a different opinion, but after you have verified that he understands the colors and what a circle is, and he still calls this yellow cube or yellow square a circle, and a red as well, then you may call him a retard. So we also did look at a very basic formula, the formula of the circumference of a circle, which was 2 times pi times r. And we also said, well, this is as solid as 1 plus 1 is 2, because nobody can challenge that formula. We had a look at the Gaussian map and the radius and the circumference being here the equator, and then using this math, which basically 11 to 12-year-olds learn at school, we could identify that with an equator of 40,000 kilometers, the radius must be 6,371 kilometers. And that would look like this, with the values filled in. We then said that this was some sort of proof toward globers. We concluded that somehow that would influence the distance of, or the size of the United States, but we'll come to that later. Now what I'm going to do now is take you along with a more practical example, and we cut out the part of the flat Earth map from North Pole to equator, and then have a look at that map. So people, here we have the extract out of the PowerPoint, and we have taken out, let's say, the circle from the North Pole to the equator. There is of course much more flat Earth around here, but that's not of interest at the moment. So the 12-year-old math tells us that in order to have 40,000 kilometers circumference, that's 10,000, 10,000, 10,000, 10,000, totally 40,000. The radius must be 6,371 kilometers. The problem, however, is that we know that the distance from the North Pole to the equator is 10,000 kilometers, not 6,300. And still we also know that the equator is 40,000 kilometers. How is this possible? Well, I've taken here the liberty of taking a piece of paper with the length of the 10,000 kilometers. See? Sorry, here it is. It goes around here, from there to there. That's 10,000 kilometers. And we see that that doesn't hold. In other words, just imagine how big it should be here. Oh my God. See? So the problem is that I cannot have a distance from the North Pole to the equator of 10,000 kilometers, which is by definition the case. We talk about 6,371 kilometers, we talk about 40,000 kilometers. A kilometer is 1,000 times a meter, and a meter is defined as the 1/10,000,000th part of the North Pole to the equator. In other words, we know by definition that the distance from the North Pole to the equator is 10,000 kilometers. Now, how can I get still 40,000 kilometers equator and that distance? Well, I could create a cone. A cone could be something like this. You see? But that would make flat darts cone heads. The other solution would be if it was a ball. because then
as you can see, I can maintain the radius with that distance. I can maintain in all directions 40,000 kilometers circumference, and I can also have an outer distance from the North Pole to the equator of 10,000 kilometers or 10 million meters. So the only solution of being able to have a model that fits what every 12-year-old should be able to calculate with, is r times 2 times pi is the circumference. Now, if the radius would be 10,000 kilometers, that would mean that, of course, the equator suddenly would be around the 60,000 kilometers. I will show you the exact numbers later. And then that would mean by the time you get to Australia, the circumference would be 93,000 kilometers. And that basically would make Australia more than 10 or around between 9 and 10,000 kilometers wide. And therefore much bigger than almost twice the size of the United States. So it is obvious, using simple math, every 12-year-old can understand. There's only one way that the radius, the circumference and the distance North Pole to equator fit, and that's on the globe.
So here we are back, and we have now identified that the distance from the North Pole to the equator should be 10,000 kilometers, simply because that is the definition of the meter. The good thing about it is it at least makes America again 1,300 miles from top to bottom. But it also brings, let's say, south of Australia, almost at 15,000 kilometers away from the North Pole. And when you then calculate the circumference at that level, it's 94,000 kilometers. Now, I made a little mistake in the in-between video where I showed it on the table, where I said Australia would become like 14,000 kilometers wide. Now it does actually become around 10,000 kilometers wide. Why? Because if this is 95,000 kilometers, roughly, and you can here see that Australia is 1 to 2.5, almost 3 parts of a 24-hour circle, then you can simply divide by 24 times 3 or 2.5, and you get that this distance here to there would be almost like 10,000 kilometers. Which we know is not true. You know, you drive a car, you can measure it, and at best you get like 4,000 kilometers wide Australia, not 10,000 kilometers. So you could say the Earth is flat, therefore, and to make it all match, the distance between from North Pole to the equator is 10,000 kilometers, because that is the definition. Therefore, the equator suddenly becomes 62,831 kilometers, and that makes the whole thing pretty much way too big. So the alternative, as I said, the alternative shape is a cone, because that is where you can have, let's say here, a circle around the equator here, where from the center of that cone to the outer rim here, you can have 6,000 kilometers and have a circumference of 40,000 kilometers and have a 10,000 kilometer distance to the North Pole. This would be a valid shape, but then you would basically have to deny a lot of stuff. And basically you would have to become some sort of conehead, because you no longer say the flat Earth is the right thing, but the cone. So what I try to say is the following: you are a retard if you understand a thing every 12-year-old should. And that is how you calculate the circumference of a circle. And if you now deny the simple fact that it is impossible to fit a North Pole to equator of 10,000 kilometers and an equator of 40,000 kilometers, those two don't match. Every 12-year-old should be able to calculate this, or at least understand it. If you don't do that, if you don't understand this very basic given, then I think you're on purpose deluding yourself, or you're just fucking stupid and therefore a retard. Because retard means slow, you are behind, more than slow, you can't even keep up with a 12-year-old.